Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar on social investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you for joining. Before we start, my name is Andrea Sanchez from Alire, and I will be your host today. Just a few housekeeping rules. Following our guest interventions, we will have time to take your questions, so do not hesitate to share your thoughts by using the chat box. I will also be grateful if all the speakers be kindly bearing with their allocated time. Finally, we have simultaneous translation into English and Spanish, so you can select it in the Zoom options. Thanks again for being with us, and without further ado, let me pass the floor to the Secretary General of Finance in Common, Mr. Adama Marico, followed by ALIDE's Secretary General, Mr. Edgardo Alvarez, for some opening remarks. Please, Mr. Adama, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I am going to start my discussion today with you by thanking ALIDE and the Coalition for Social Investment for convening today's important event on social investment trends, discussing the challenges and opportunities of this main subject in the Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a pleasure, of course, to be with you, and thank you everyone to put this together. Today's event is particularly important somehow because it can facilitate the collaboration on this topic among different, public development banks, especially now on the road of the upcoming Financing Common Summit, which will take place from the 4th to the 6th of September for the very first time in the Latin American area. So really, let me start by reminding the collective effort we are supporting to scale up social investment, which are a prerequisite to achieve all the sustainable development goals, to realize low carbon transition, and to demonstrate resilience to the various and cumulative crises our countries are going through. The role of public development banks, which finance social infrastructure projects and different sectors, is more important than ever, because the condition for the success of an ecological transition in a country or a territory require the financing of new infrastructure, the training of the necessary human resources, and above all, a strong ownership by all socio-economic actors. Decent job, skills, or even fighting against bad conditions. So our condition of success to support an inclusive economic development, which supports at the same time the climate transition, the peace and stability in the area. At Finance in Common, we strongly believe that the social investment have a capacity to generate more resilience and better social and economic outcomes. But public development banks need expertise. They need knowledge, tools, and partnerships to increase the impact of their projects and to address the financing gap. This is why global coalitions like Finance in Common are important, and why also a role at the regional coalition ALIDE is gathering among his members is also important to anchor a strong social agenda in the projects we are delivering and the operations we are conceiving. In addition to the IDFC members, the Finance in Common initiative was launched to bring together all these participants, all these financing power among the public development banks network, at the ground level to invest and to orient the primary financing within the social and investment agenda. As you know, it operates as a global initiative where public development banks can coordinate their activities and support the emergence of a global financial framework. So it's important to have those numbers also in mind. We are talking about 23 trillion of assets, detained by the community of public development banks. And every year we put in new investment 2.7 trillion of US dollars every year. It's a huge amount we are investing in the economy. So giving to those investments a priority with a clear mandate on aligning our finance and guiding those finances toward SDGs and towards a green agenda and toward a SDG and social aligned investment. So all these actors can take a social objective into consideration, and how social is prioritized or even mainstreamed can have a very important impact. Today's event, I'm going to finish there, provides a rich outline of experience. It demonstrates that some of the champions around this table can also showcase and guide the discussion on the policy side, also the financing side and the project side are emerging in Latin America and the rest of the world. So I'm convinced that we will learn a lot from today's story, and looking forward to those discussions to happen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Marico. Now I give the floor to Mr. Alvarez.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and also Adama. Dear participants, on behalf of ALIDE, welcome to the webinar on social investment in Latin America and the Caribbean, organized by the Social Investment Coalition of the Financing Common Movement, FIX, and our Latin American Association of Development Finance Institutions, ALIDE. As we have mentioned on several occasions, since the beginning of the movement Financing Common, we in ALIDE have firmly supported it, convinced of the objectives which it was born. On one hand, align financial flows and investments in climate-compatible projects, taking the framework of the Paris Climate Agreement, and on the other hand, incorporating the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, into our operations. But now, FIX goes beyond those initial objectives, consolidating itself as a global forum of the priorities and trends that concern financing development in the world, generating variable innovations in issues, trends, cases, and methodologies that help to define the role of our banks. Without any doubt, the FIX is a key space to collectively advance in charting a new path towards sustainability and inclusive economic growth for the coming years, and to strengthen engagement to all those who believe that climate action implies for the health and general well-being of our nations. ALIDE and its member entities, the development banks of Latin America and the Caribbean, are aligned with this axis and actively participate in the work on these major challenges in favor of a global vision of promoting responsible financing, as well as supporting investment mobilization and joint action between the public and private sectors, international organizations, and civil society. As a network of PDBs, we will serve as a channel of cooperation and distribute this knowledge in the community of development finance institutions, not only in our region, but also to promote interregional cooperation supporting the World Federation of Development Financing Institutions. We believe that on the basis of the shortcomings that our societies revealed in recent crises, in particular the health crisis, it is very important and necessary to standardize the concept of social investment in public development banking. Historically, we have focused on the promotion of productive sectors, and more recently, environmental and social sectors. But we must be clear on what do we mean by social investment, what aspects does it imply, why it is important to incorporate it into banking action. I tell you, more than a decade ago, ALIDE, together with the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, began a collaborative path towards green banking. This road has borne fruit, and we continue to help introduce new aspects of this approach to the agenda. So we believe that with the concept of social investment, we can also travel a similar path and debuting it with this webinar by the Fixed Coalition on the way to this year's summit in Cartagena de Indias, Colombia in September, as Adama sought. And now to our ALIDE General Assembly in San Pedro Sula in Honduras in a few more weeks from May the 31st to June the 2nd. We want to invite you to join the Social Investment Coalition and support it. From ALIDE, you will find an ally to spread their knowledge and proposals. In that regard, I announce that on the website of ALIDE, specifically in the Development Banking Hub, which is a platform of platforms on issues related to banking and financing development, we will dedicate a section to this dissemination with the identity image of the coalition, so that our community of financial institutions could find a repository of knowledge related to this field and continue exploring new activities that support our network of financial institutions. I want to greet and congratulate the people of the coalition, whom my colleagues at ALIDE assured me, and I'm pretty sure about this, do an extraordinary job. Isabelle Brun from the Development Bank of the Council of Europe, Regine Leroy from the French Development Agency, and Arthur Patot from the Secretary of FIX at AFD. I would like to express our gratitude to the speakers and panelists who generously give us their time and knowledge to share in this webinar, and to you, all of you, the participants who are with us today. Your participation will contribute and ensure that this webinar is successful. One last thought: we must ensure that no one is left behind in the transition towards a low carbon economy. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks, Mr. Alvarez. Let me now give the floor to Isabelle Brun, Senior Advisor, Sector Policy and Partnership of the Council of Europe Development Bank, which is co-leading the Coalition for Social Investment. Please, Mrs. Brun.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you very much, Edgardo, for your kind words. So let me say a few words about the Coalition for Social Investment. It's an initiative of Finance in Common, which the CEB, the Council of Europe Development Bank, has been leading together with the Agence Française de Développement since it was launched in 2020. And I thank my colleague of the AFD, Virginie Leroy, who is with us here today. The coalition brings together around 20 institutions, including our sponsors, the UNDP, the ILO, the WHO, as well as the OECD, public development banks, and all the regional networks of DFIs, which constitute the World Federation of DFIs, many of which are present with us today. And ALIDE in particular was one of the very first ones to join us, and we thank them for that. As a background, let me recall that ample data underpins the importance of strong social sectors and quality infrastructure to increase communities' resilience, as Adama already mentioned. Data also shows that social investment helps achieving a fair transition, in particular following the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Investing in human capital and in well-targeted, well-designed, and well-implemented social infrastructure investments can simultaneously address social, environmental, and economic objectives by providing equitable access to quality and affordable services. It is very important to underline that social investments can and should be profitable, thanks namely to their multiplier effect. Research shows that investing in early years and moving towards universal, high-quality, affordable healthcare, education, and childcare systems has a potential return to society of up to $17 for each dollar invested. $1 invested in social protection has a return on GDP of up to $2 to $5 after only 2 years. And investing in health has an estimated 4-fold return for every dollar invested. So these are hard facts. Public development banks can play a unique role in this shift towards more and better social investment, as Edgardo underlined very well. By providing financing on adequate, including concessional terms, by helping leverage private finance, public development banks can impact the entire financing system, contributing to channeling funds towards social investment. Public development banks can help also build institutional capacity, support policy and institutional reforms, and enhance the quality of projects by applying a stronger social lens.
Normas y estándares comunes. Sin embargo, para asumir estos retos, la coalición y los bancos tienen que armonizar sus prácticas y desarrollar normas y estándares comunes.
Interoperability but also support a more robust and converging approach and cooperation with governments and policymakers. So to respond to these challenges, the coalition works to improve expertise in the field of social investment, to advance advocacy, including through events, and increase cooperation to develop concrete and innovative projects on the ground. So let me share a few examples of its activities. Exchanging with nearly 50 PDBs, the coalition has put together a common understanding of what is meant by social investment and its scope. And this was underlined by Edgardo as one of the key points, the definition, so to speak, of social investment. And the coalition also proposed an analysis of what PDBs need to support more and better social investment. We also prepared an advocacy paper underlining the nexus between social, environment and climate, economic and security matters. At the last Financing Common Summit in October 2020 in Abidjan, we presented an investment agenda for health and social protection around the role of public development banks and their operational added value to strengthen the resilience of health systems. In addition to ad hoc interventions during regional or multilateral summits, such as the COP, UN, or G20 gatherings, another aspect of the coalition's activity is to share knowledge on social results measurement frameworks. And we have a few of our partners working on these aspects with us here today, and I thank them for that. More recently, on 30 March, just a few weeks ago, the coalition hosted a conversation between the Director General of the ILO, Gilbert Humbo, and representatives of public development banks and civil society organizations to discuss the policies and investments needed to support social justice and just climate transitions. This event gathered over 200 people representing more than 60 institutions and helped showcasing the critical role of public development banks, which already do finance projects globally and which could do even more to accelerate the just component of these transitions to benefit people and the planet. The coalition looks forward to engaging with you all in the run-up to the 2023 Cartagena Summit in September to make sure that the social agenda of development financing can deliver concrete results. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all excellent discussion.
Many thanks, Mrs. Broom. Now, please let me turn to Ramon Pineda, Head of the Employment Unit of the Economic Development Division from United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, for an overview of the social policy and investment challenge specific to the LAC region. Please, Mr. Pineda, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? Well, I will switch to Spanish because I prepared the presentation in Spanish. So. Bueno, antes que nada, un placer.
First of all, it is
Un segundo. Esta es una presentación, tengo como 7 minutos para hacerla. No se asusten porque tiene 10 láminas. Voy a hacerla en el tiempo adecuado, pero quisiera dejarle, sobre todo para fines futuros, cierta información que creo que vale la pena compartir acá. Lo primero es hablar de que antes de la crisis de la pandemia ya la región, América Latina, estaba prácticamente estancada en términos de crecimiento y generación de empleo. Estos dos gráficos están mostrando esa situación, donde observamos que después de la crisis de la deuda, la región no ha logrado sostener tasas de crecimiento similares a las que tenía antes. En los numeritos que están arriba, un poco pequeños para ustedes, pero que lo van a poder ver con calma luego, vemos que básicamente durante la década 2010-2019 la tasa de crecimiento fue exactamente igual a la tasa que exhibió la región durante la década perdida. En materia de empleo, el cuadro no es muy distinto. Luego de la crisis de la deuda, la región no ha logrado sostener tasas de crecimiento en la generación de empleo similares a las que tenía antes de eso. Y nuevamente son la baja inversión y el estancamiento de la productividad uno de los factores fundamentales que inhiben el crecimiento y la generación de empleo. Y aquí estamos hablando de formación bruta de capital fijo. Si hablamos en particular de lo que se refiere a la inversión en social, los cuadros son similares o incluso peores. Durante la pandemia, los distintos gobiernos en la región hicieron esfuerzos enormes por aumentar el gasto para tomar, priorizando las transferencias corrientes, tanto a hogares como a sectores productivos para evitar tanto el colapso de la capacidad adquisitiva de los hogares como el cierre definitivo de empresas. Y eso significó un cambio importante, un salto importante en la magnitud del gasto que se estaba dando tanto en los países de América Latina como en los países del Caribe. Sin embargo, y esto se tradujo en distintas medidas, en distintos ámbitos que aquí estamos sintetizando. Esta información está contenida en el informe económico, el estudio económico del año 2020, donde básicamente mostramos todos los esfuerzos que se hicieron en materia de políticas públicas para tratar de, por un lado, complementar, evitar un colapso mayor de la demanda agregada y por otro lado, proteger a ciertos grupos específicos que estaban siendo los más afectados por la crisis. Y durante este episodio, los bancos de desarrollo fueron claves, fundamentales en todas estas estrategias que se fijaron los gobiernos a lo largo de la región. La coyuntura actual, donde tenemos elevada inflación, aumento de las tasas de interés, mayor niveles de endeudamiento y efectos adversos que todavía persisten de la pandemia, se suman a los problemas estructurales, como vimos, de la inversión y la poca productividad, y reducen el espacio con el que cuentan los gestores de políticas públicas para promover una mayor inversión, y ya vamos a ver el impacto que tiene. Y en estos diagramas estamos mostrando, por un lado, el importante incremento que ha tenido la inflación en los últimos años en la región. En este gráfico estamos excluyendo las economías de inflación crónica y en el otro gráfico estamos mostrando qué es lo que ha pasado con la trayectoria de la deuda pública en los países de América Latina. En el Caribe la dinámica es similar, donde observamos que también se ha venido experimentando un incremento en la deuda mucho antes de la pandemia, pero con la pandemia alcanzó un nivel máximo. Y sin embargo, si bien se ha venido reduciendo en los últimos años, todavía sigue en niveles elevados en comparación con la pandemia. Esta situación de mayor inflación, mayores tasas de interés y mayor endeudamiento significa que cada vez se están destinando más recursos para tanto públicos como privados para pagar intereses que están restándose a otros factores como la inversión, incluyendo la inversión en infraestructura y la inversión social. Y aquí vemos en este diagrama cuál ha sido la trayectoria de la composición, el porcentaje que representa el gasto en capital, el gasto de capital, perdón, el pago de los intereses y qué es lo que ha pasado en materia de gasto de salud. Mientras observamos que el gasto de capital ha venido descendiendo en los últimos años, si bien el 2020 significó un incremento y cambió esta trayectoria, nuevamente en el 2022 y posiblemente en el 2023 se va a observar una reducción de esto. Por otro lado, el pago, lo que se refiere a los intereses, que estamos viendo cómo se ha venido creciendo sostenidamente y va a crecer más conforme aumenta el saldo de la deuda y aumentan las tasas de interés, estamos esperando que por los próximos años eso también está pasando. Entonces aquí, esto es lo que nosotros hemos llamado en ciertos documentos que hemos preparado recientemente, tensiones al crecimiento económico, tensiones al desarrollo económico, donde los países se están enfrentando el dilema de cuánto destinan al pago de bienes en intereses versus cuánto destinan en gasto en salud o cuánto destinan en materia de gasto de capital. Las perspectivas a futuro no son alentadoras, pero el reto es estar a la altura de lo que enfrentamos. Primero, el menor crecimiento que se anticipa y la menor inversión se traducirán en un bajo ritmo de crecimiento en la generación de empleo. Pero por otro lado, no solo es un problema de baja creación de empleo, sino los sectores con mayor dinamismo son servicios y comercios. Y son sectores que tradicionalmente están asociados a bajos niveles de productividad y bajos niveles de salario. Por lo tanto, estas dos variables se van a ver afectadas en los próximos años. Asimismo, brechas en materias etarias entre jóvenes y adultos y entre hombres y mujeres se podrían ampliar en los mercados laborales respecto a los niveles existentes pre-pandemia. Recordemos
vis-a-vis the levels we saw before the pandemic. The pandemic increased these.
Restablecimiento de equilibrio en los mercados laborales. Lentamente se han reducido los niveles, los mercados laborales se han ajustado y eso ha significado que brechas que, al menos en términos de participación laboral, donde se habían alcanzado grandes logros en términos de la participación de las mujeres, se revirtieron durante la pandemia en el 2021 y 2022. Ahora es que se están restableciendo los niveles que existían antes. Por eso nosotros tememos que, y se ha observado un cierto incremento de la pobreza y la desigualdad, que sencillamente los niveles de inflación elevados y el menor espacio para políticas sociales y sectoriales pueden estar acentuando ese riesgo. Adicionalmente, como ya ha sido señalado anteriormente y muy bien, la región enfrenta grandes retos en lo que se supone al cambio climático para los países del Caribe, para muchos países de la región, los costos financieros que implica enfrentar los huracanes, las tormentas y en otros, todos los riesgos que implica el cambio en sectores como la agricultura por cambio climático, van a ser acompañados dentro de poco por una transición energética, y una transición energética que va a significar grandes esfuerzos en materia de infraestructura, pero para otros países va a significar grandes retos en materia de sacrificios de recaudación y de capacidad productiva, y por otro lado van a significar grandes movimientos y sacrificios sociales y económicos para ciertos sectores. Es decir, la región debe estar preparada para enfrentar el cambio climático, la transición energética, pero también para los retos que va a significar este periodo de transición. Y como había dicho, el papel de la banca de desarrollo va a ser clave en todo esto. Ha sido clave durante mucho tiempo, se hizo muy notorio su importancia y su efectividad durante la pandemia, pero en la actualidad el papel se hace más importante todavía porque facilitaría en gran medida la ampliación de espacio para las políticas públicas, pero también facilitaría la capacidad de reacción de los sectores privados ante los retos que está enfrentando la región. Nosotros consideramos en la CEPAL que es necesario dar una visión estratégica a la inversión y donde la universalización de servicios públicos debe ser fundamental. Aquí estamos presentando, no voy a ir en los detalles del cuadro, pero estamos presentando algunos rubros que son importantes y críticos, que van a ser muy críticos en la actualidad en términos del agua y saneamiento, pero en el futuro en términos de la capacidad de generación de electricidad y los cambios que va a suponer esta matriz energética. Pero como bien se dijo anteriormente, mejorar la salud pública, el medio ambiente y en general la inversión social genera empleo. Genera empleo y normalmente es empleo de calidad. Por otro lado, aumenta la sostenibilidad, las políticas necesarias para aumentar la sostenibilidad de la energía y las transiciones hídricas, se reducen las emisiones de carbono, promueven las alianzas públicos-privadas que han sido tan exitosas en muchos países de la región y entiendo que van a ser abordados durante este evento. Adicionalmente, crea incentivos grandes para la integración tanto económica y energética a nivel regional. Y por otro lado, lo que sí es cierto es que va a demandar grandes esfuerzos en materia de adecuar las normas existentes, tanto en materia jurídica, en materia de neutralidad de energía y la regulación para garantizar que la provisión de estos bienes públicos se haga de la manera más eficiente y más eficaz. Adicionalmente, son necesarias políticas públicas productivas y laborales para impulsar la inserción laboral, en especial entre mujeres y jóvenes, pero también para promover el aumento de la productividad. Hay que aprovechar el reto que implica la transformación digital que se está dando para, a través de programas de capacitación, promover esa inclusión digital entre jóvenes y mujeres, promover el financiamiento del emprendimiento de estos grupos que han sido especialmente, tradicionalmente afectados y dejados atrás en alguna medida, pero fueron especialmente afectados durante la pandemia. Asimismo, es necesario mejorar los mecanismos de coordinación entre los verdes, además. Aquí hay un sesgo en algunas de las cosas en materia laboral, porque precisamente nosotros pensamos que la inversión y la dinámica de los mercados de trabajo, la inversión social y la dinámica de los mercados de trabajo van a ser claves en el futuro de la región. Adicionalmente, es necesario apoyar, impulsar políticas sectoriales para la activación de sectores productivos como el comercio y el turismo, no solo que fueron grandemente afectados por la pandemia, sino que van a ser efectivamente afectados por la transición energética y constituyen espacios y oportunidades para mejorar la inserción tanto de jóvenes como de mujeres. Adicionalmente, como ustedes mejor que nadie lo saben, es necesario extender y profundizar los programas de apoyo a las pequeñas y medianas empresas, no solo para favorecer las políticas de inserción laboral y de empleo, pero sobre todo para propiciar una transformación productiva y digital que favorezca el aumento de la productividad a lo largo de la región. Y adicionalmente, un aspecto que nosotros aquí en la CEPAL le hemos dado mucho énfasis, creemos que es fundamental para balancear un poco las desigualdades que existen en el mercado de trabajo, pero en general en la actividad económica entre hombres y mujeres, es la necesidad de potenciar la economía del cuidado. Durante la pandemia quedó en evidencia la carencia de una estructura de economía del cuidado adecuada en la región, lo que significó la separación temporalmente, en algunos casos por mucho tiempo, más de lo que se pensaba inicialmente, de mujeres, en especial de mujeres jóvenes de los mercados de trabajo y de los sistemas educativos. Y eso fundamentalmente pasa por la no existencia de un balance adecuado entre la corresponsabilidad entre hombres, mujeres, Estado, mercado y familias en este concepto de la economía del cuidado. Entonces nosotros pensamos que es clave mantener los incentivos para que este eslabón perdido en la estructura productiva y social de las economías de Latinoamérica se dé para balancear, por un lado, el desbalance que existe entre hombres y mujeres en las cargas en materia de cuidado en los hogares, pero por otro lado, para adecuar los salarios y las remuneraciones de muchas de las personas que están desarrollando empleos no remunerados a lo largo de la región. Y como son bastante grandes esos números. Para no excederme los 6 minutos, lo dejo hasta acá y estoy a la orden para cualquier pregunta posterior.
Thank you very much for these contributions, Mr. Pineda.
Muchísimas gracias por su aporte, señor Pineda.
We now move from the policy context to the operations and the role that public development banks and development finance institutions can play to meet this challenge. We will hear from two national development banks, AFD from France and TSA-KB from Turkey, who will present us how they envisage their social investment projects and activities. We will also hear from the European Investment Bank, which is developing an integrated social impact framework with tools to better measure the impact of such operations. First, we invite Mr. Carlos Soto Iguarán from AFD. Please go ahead.
Muchas gracias. Yo trabajo en la división de salud
Thank you very much. I work in the division of health.
Y quiero agradecer este espacio para compartir algunos proyectos desarrollados por la AFD en la región y que de cierta manera contribuyen a responder a los retos que fueron claramente presentados por el colega de la CEPAL y que podrían ser además un ejemplo para futuros cofinanciamientos con otros bancos públicos de desarrollo. Quiero empezar primero por presentar brevemente el enfoque holístico que la AFD promueve en el marco de los proyectos que financia y que articula tres problemáticas transversales. En primer lugar, es mejorar el estado y preservación de los ecosistemas y la adaptación y mitigación al cambio climático. En segundo, es apoyar la cohesión social a través de la reducción de desigualdades multidimensionales y la promoción de la inclusión con un enfoque de género importante. Y en tercer lugar, apoyar el fortalecimiento institucional y la participación ciudadana con el fin de impulsar de manera sostenible y legítima transformaciones estructurales. Este enfoque permite prevenir o evitar que se refuercen las vulnerabilidades ambientales, sociales, institucionales y así contribuir a un desarrollo justo, incluyente, sostenible y democrático. Antes de presentarles tres grupos de proyectos que hacen el vínculo entre las problemáticas climáticas y sociales, mencionar brevemente que en 2022, América Latina representó aproximadamente 10% de los compromisos financieros del grupo AFD, con un fuerte énfasis en adaptación y mitigación al cambio climático. Entonces, el primer grupo de proyectos precisamente se ataca conjuntamente a vulnerabilidades climáticas y sociales. Y aquí destaco un proyecto en México, una línea de crédito a una institución financiera, FIRA, que busca la promoción de prácticas agrícolas modernas, rentables, sostenibles y que permitan al sector agrícola mejorar, resistir mejor a los impactos del cambio climático. Y lo interesante es que esta línea de crédito se acompaña de una subvención financiada con fondos delegados de la Unión Europea que permite financiar las poblaciones más vulnerables, mejorar sus capacidades y abaratar la oferta financiera. En Ecuador, en 2022, en cofinanciamiento con el BID, en el marco de la recuperación de la pandemia, se hizo un préstamo de políticas públicas que se concentró en medidas para la integración de mujeres al mercado laboral y la promoción de empleos verdes. Y aquí se tiene en particular un focus, una focalización en género, pero también en el sector agrícola. Luego, haciendo o en línea con la agenda de inversión social propuesta en el FIX, en el marco del FIX en Abidjan, existen otros proyectos que buscan fortalecer los sistemas de salud y protección social. En la región, en Costa Rica y en México, se desarrollaron cooperaciones técnicas que buscan apoyar la construcción y adecuación de hospitales verdes y resilientes. La idea es, se desarrolló una herramienta que mide el impacto que tienen estas infraestructuras en su entorno, midiendo la energía, el uso de energía, agua, residuos, pero también cuestiones de gobernanza que permiten así limitar la huella de carbono, pero también hacer que estos hospitales tengan un impacto limitado en su entorno. En República Dominicana estamos trabajando en un proyecto bastante innovador de protección social adaptativa que busca movilizar los mecanismos de protección social para mejorar la gestión de los recursos hídricos en una cuenca en el sur del país que está afectada con alta vulnerabilidad social y sufre de deforestación y de los efectos de los cambios climáticos. Aquí la idea es promover emprendimientos y empleos verdes y el pago por servicios ambientales. Luego, el COVID-19 demostró que una crisis sanitaria puede desbordar en una crisis social y económica de alto impacto, y hay la necesidad de apoyar inversiones que permitan mejorar la capacidad de prevenir y responder frente a futuras pandemias. En 2020, la FD hizo una donación a la Agencia Pública de Salud Pública del Caribe, CARFA, precisamente para apoyar la vigilancia de enfermedades infecciosas y la resiliencia de los sistemas en relación al cambio climático. E igualmente a la CAF se le dio una línea de crédito para financiar la compra de vacunas en el medio de pandemia. Como saben, en el medio de la pandemia, y como saben, en este contexto se abrió el debate de la necesidad de asegurar cierto nivel de independencia en materia de producción local de vacunas. Y ahí yo pienso que es interesante hacer el vínculo con la iniciativa que tiene la Unión Europea y América Latina para la fabricación de vacunas y de medicamentos. Mi colega Arthur está enviándoles vínculos a algunos de estos proyectos.
Links of some of these projects.
Estoy mencionando. Luego, además de los proyectos, creo que es importante mencionar que la FD ha desarrollado ciertas herramientas, instrumentos que permiten fortalecer el diálogo de políticas públicas e informar la toma de decisiones, y en particular que faciliten o que vehiculen estas inversiones sociales. En México, por ejemplo, hay una facilidad que busca analizar las causas de las desigualdades, y existen modelos también macroeconómicos como el GEM o la metodología CEQ que permite también evaluar la estructura de impuestos y el impacto de modificarla o de modificar las transferencias sociales. Y resaltar también que internamente la FD tiene un instrumento que permite medir ex ante y ex post el impacto de los proyectos en materia de desarrollo sostenible. Entonces, uno al momento de presentar un proyecto al Consejo de Administración evalúa el grado de impacto del proyecto en estas áreas, en diferentes áreas, que puede condicionar que se valide el financiamiento e incluso influir sobre las condiciones financieras. Ya voy a terminar mi charla simplemente haciendo una invitación para que sigamos estrechando vínculos entre todos los bancos públicos de desarrollo presentes con el fin de lograr mayores colaboraciones, mayores cofinanciamientos. Ya cada una de las instituciones tiene impactos importantes, lograríamos más más y lo hacemos juntos. Las temáticas, la CEPAL lo mencionó algunas. Yo creo que la protección social adaptativa, la transición justa, producción local de vacunas son algunas de las ideas, la preparación contra próximas pandemias, y yo pienso que es importante el desarrollo de herramientas que nos permite identificar oportunidades y maneras de alinearnos. Importante también que intercambiemos sobre experiencias, sobre cómo podemos colaborar, cómo hacemos líneas de créditos entre bancos nacionales y bilaterales o regionales o multi. Y básicamente la invitación es que este webinario y el espacio de aquí a Cartagena en septiembre tracemos una hoja de ruta y allá podamos prepararla e implementarla en los años a venir. Muchísimas gracias.
In the next few years. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Soto. Now we give the floor to Mrs. Sevilay Kiran, Loan Analysis Department Head and Social Impact Working Group Head from TSKB, Turkey. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be with you. First of all, I would like to say that. And let me start a short introduction. Industrial Development Bank of Turkey was established in 1950 with the support of World Bank, Central Bank of Turkey, and a shareholding of private commercial banks. We are Turkey's first privately owned development and investment bank. We have been supporting Turkey's sustainable economic growth since our foundation based on our long-lasting collaboration with our stakeholders through a broad area of corporate banking, investment banking, and also advisory services. We serve as knowledge banking with a strong technical team, including economic researchers, engineers, and financial analysts. We continue to build in-house capacity by these teams. We have prudent credit risk assessment understanding from the beginning of the loan allocation through multidisciplinary assessment by various aspects in accordance with both our bank's perspective and also environmental social frameworks and ethical costs of development finance institution we work with. Having said that, while providing financial support, we also share our know-how with our clients and guide them in respect of environmental and social and other technical topics. As a bank that supports inclusive and sustainable, this is the first slide I have forgotten. As a bank that supports inclusive and sustainable development of our country, with impact financing through the long-lasting relationship with development finance institution. It's important to note that TSKB started to increase its social investment-oriented activities by also employing a social expert. We integrated the environmental and social risk evolution in loan allocation and also investment review process. And our social risk evolution includes observing stakeholders engagement, meetings, discussion with local authorities, local communities, and etc. I will mention in detail the next slides. You will see in this slide the sustainability structure in TSKB. As you see, there are 7 working groups, and 3 of them are under the head of social impact and inclusion. There are 17 members in the Sustainable Management Committee. If we add the employees in working groups, the number reach about 70, which corresponds to 18% of the total number of employees in TSKB. Actually, as a TSKB, we aim to ensure that the sustainability issues are adopted by all bank employees. During evaluation project we financed, we use some tools. One of them is environmental and social risk evaluation tool. Is named ERET. Environmental and social assessment is conducted in parallel with the technical assessment during the entire credit assessment procedure by TSKB engineers and social experts. The ERET model is the key tool in addressing potential environmental and social impacts of projects and clients. While environmental issues, as you know, were predominant in environmental and social risk assessment in the past, but in the recent years, the importance of social issues has increased. So, as TSKB, as a bank, we have employed a social expert in this context. And also,
Informarse de los clientes que estaban trabajando con los préstamos de capital, con el grupo de trabajo de nuestro banco. Como ven, que se hace también una evaluación de los clientes.
Within the scope of site visits, consultation meetings are conducted by social experts in order to assess and monitor the environmental, social, and also economic impacts of the projects on local communities and environmental social performance of the corporates. In these meetings, communities' level of knowledge about the project and the relations between the project and the local communities are analyzed. And also whether there is a project-related grievance or not are questions. Besides, internal and external grievance mechanism of the project are followed by TSKB. These corporates are obliged by TSKB to improve by grievance mechanism within the project. Furthermore, a focus group meeting with the female employees are conducted by social experts to be ensured that there is no inconvenience or dissatisfaction about working conditions and code of conduct issues. And the last slide, I will mention about another tool, SDG mapping tool. TSKB's SDG mapping is a tailor-made tool that's based on the bank's experience on development, banking, and related credit terms. We aim to measure our contribution in sustainable development by examining the relationship between credit terms and European Union sustainable development goals. As of today, TSKB stands on a position where we perform our SDGs mapping for our activities, particularly for lending process. By doing that, we can measure SDGs contribution of our outstanding principals and leave loan disbursement. Also, in our loan appraisal committees, SDGs mapping outputs are taken into consideration. We closely monitor the results of these mappings and have a dynamic structure that not only measures SDGs contribution of our loans, but also setting realistic targets for the current effort to the better position. At the beginning of the speech, Andrea mentioned that I am head of the Social Impact Working Group. As the Social Impact Working Group, we have been working on what we can do for social performance measurements. I hope that the next seminars or next meeting, we present you with an instrument in which we can measure social impact or social performance. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Mrs. Kiran. Now, we want to give the floor to Julia Chambers and Jasmine Bagni from European Investment Bank.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry, you can hear me clearly now.
Yeah, yes.
Great, thanks. And is someone going to be sharing my slides or should I do so myself?
Yes, please, if you can do it. Or,
They're being shared now, I think.
Oh, they're being shared, okay. Fantastic, thank you so much. Great, so if we can go to the next slide, please, that would be helpful, thanks. So I think just quickly, and many of the speakers have touched on this. So at the EIB, we're working currently on developing what we call a social sustainability and inclusion framework, and really looking at how we can measure that. And that comes obviously within the global trends that a number of you have touched upon. In particular, really trying to address the meta crisis of the interlinked issues around climate change, environmental degradation, and inequality. And again, as many of you have mentioned, obviously these more recent shocks that we've all experienced and are still experiencing in terms of COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, and food insecurity. We're also really thinking about this within the context of conflict and fragility and the numbers of refugees that the world is facing at the moment, the rising working poverty rates and inequality. And this is also true inside the European Union, where the EIB works a lot as well. And some of the mega trends, such as rapid urbanization, digitalization, that we know may bring maybe new and unforeseen social challenges, alongside, of course, aging population and changes in human mobility. So next slide, please. What we're keen to really try and do is be very clear around what we mean by social investments, so as to not only be able to track our impact, but also be able to attract more financing, obviously, to those types of investments. We obviously face the barriers that we're all familiar with, in terms of social being less easy to define, it being very context specific. The gender and social norms that we face. I can hear some echo. Yeah, that's better. Sorry. The lack of incentives for the private sector. Is it just me?
No, I hear it too. It's not just
there's
you.
strong feedback. Yeah. Great. We'll try again. Thanks. Obviously, public sector constraints, etc. And so, as I said, I think what we're really keen to try and do is work towards a single typology for ourselves at the EIB in terms of social, what we mean by that, and how to attract it. So, next slide, please. Thanks. So where we are now, institutionally, is that we have a wide variety of policies, of tools, of targets in certain areas, in the social areas, and we're really trying to pull that together in order to, on the one hand, make a much stronger case for building back better, for the relevance of socially sustainable and inclusive investments. As I said, to provide a single and durable conceptual framework on the one hand, and on the other, this typology of social impact projects. And with that, and this is where we're facing the most challenges, clarity on what really counts in terms of volumes as contributing to social sustainability and inclusive finance. And as a result, be able to track and communicate that in a simple yet meaningful way. So these are all big challenges. On the next slide, please. So where we're at in terms of how we view socially sustainable and inclusive investments, and our lens, so to speak, when it comes to that, is our starting point is what we refer to as uphold. This is very much the human rights and risk mitigation and do no harm aspect of our work, which we apply across everything that we do, and looks at our social standards around resettlement, labor rights, conflict risk assessments, for example, preventing violence against women and girls. And we also have a new, more recent standard looking at our work through financial intermediaries. So that's very much our starting point. And then we organize our work around three broad thematic areas when it comes to social sustainability and inclusion. The first one is very much around what we refer to as include, which is really looking at those projects that have specific efforts to increase their positive social benefits and can importantly point to those social outcomes. And linked to that, those that focus primarily on investments in social infrastructure and human capital. The second bucket, so to speak, is the one we refer to as REACH, and these are the targeted projects that we do. So those that explicitly target underserved groups or segments of the population, or that seek to substantially contribute to reducing certain inequalities, and that can also be geographical inequalities. And the third, and this is a new area for us in terms of trying to measure our social impact, is around future-proofing. So what we're trying to do is also really look at how we prevent future inequalities and social vulnerabilities, and the risk of enhanced inequalities. So this really very much focuses on informing our work with analytical evidence, and really supporting the approach of our projects to highlight that potential contribution. And this is a very difficult, obviously, area to measure, but is very much the work that we do around just resilience, just transition, migration, forced displacement, prevention of conflict and fragility. Next slide, please. So in terms of the intended outcomes and the types of indicators that we are hoping to be able to track and look at, under our include work, this is very much the focus on access really to health, to education, to care, to the care infrastructure, to housing. And at the moment, in terms of access to infrastructure and inequality, we are focusing very much on gender. And that is simply because we're able to track it. And we really are trying to put in place the systems to track other forms of inequality as well. On the REACH side, this very much focuses on our work around access to finance, for example, for specific groups, for excluded groups, for women, the type of work that we do on increasing employment opportunities and importantly, leadership opportunities for women in excluded groups. We use the 2X challenge criteria a lot in this area. And in thinking about just transition, reskilling, and employment in just transition regions. On the future-proofing side, which is, as I said, more challenging for us at the moment, we're very much looking at the work that can point to the prevention of forced displacement, to an increase in the adaptive capacity of vulnerable communities, social cohesion, and then disaster preparedness and the investments that we do in terms of enhancing the capacity of countries and sectors to be ready to face emergencies, so health emergencies in particular. And the idea is that in the longer run, we will be able to aggregate our social impacts and report against 2 or 3 high-level outcome indicators. So moving on to some of the challenges, which is on the next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the big challenges, obviously, I referred to the aspect around future-proofing when it comes to measuring, prevention. That's very difficult. Obviously, there's no counterfactual, and it's tricky to know how much you've really been able to prevent something. But we're really looking into ex-ante estimations, into hotspot mappings, and how we can use some of that. Again, the same with the performance, measuring our performance of risk mitigation and how we're able to do that. We're still struggling with how we can put systems in place around that. When it comes to social, as I mentioned, the biggest challenge really is the fact that it's very context specific. But obviously standardization helps us all and helps our clients. So there's this tension between context specificity and standardization when it comes to establishing criteria. Access to data, of course, is an issue for all of us. Policy externalities, social norms that have a big impact on our work. We as the EIB don't work so much at the policy level. We rely on the European Commission to do that. So that's another challenge for us. And the issue around volume attribution is one that we are finding very difficult. So unless it's a specifically targeted project to which we can obviously apply 100% of the volume attribution, it is difficult for us to really be able to put a number, so to speak, to our financing on social sustainability and inclusion. So moving on to the last slide, we're trying to put in place enablers to help us overcome some of these challenges. These are very much around supporting our project teams with social analysis, context-specific social analysis, with estimation methodologies to fill our data gaps. We're looking at how to estimate time savings for women, for example, when it comes to infrastructure investments, how we can estimate employment generation as well. And for that, we're in dialogue with the ILO and others. And how we can use hotspot mappings when it comes to really knowing which regions may come under duress. We're looking at thematic technical assistance and advisory offerings around this, and how we can use blended finance for some of the client incentives. We've been piloting an approach to social impact financing, for example, where we reward the achievement of certain social KPIs with financial rewards. We have a number of thematic credit lines as well, and we're currently exploring a gender objective under our sustainability and awareness bonds. And we're also slowly thinking about results-based lending and whether we could use such modalities to drive more transversal social outcomes. And of course, I think as a number of you have said, I think partnerships in this area is really important in terms of the analytics, the complementarity, exchanging information on data, etc., but also on where we can adopt standard criteria so that it's easier for all of us. And the ongoing engagement, of course, with the sustainable finance community in those efforts around establishing international standards and taxonomy. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chambers. Now, if Mrs. Jasmine wants to add something.
Sorry, I should have mentioned it was just me with the presentation, just in the interest of time, so that we don't keep you for too long. But obviously, we're both here for the questions and answers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we will move to the third part of today's event and look more in depth on the financing side of social investment in LAC. Let me first turn to Marcos Mancini, Senior Advisor and Finance Sector Hub from UNDP, who will inform us about some of the financial instruments in use for impact investment targeting social SDGs in LAC. Please, Mr. Mancini, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to Adama, to Edgardo, Arthur, and all our other colleagues from FIX, the Coalition of Social Investment, and ALIDE, with whom UNDP works very closely with. In the interest of time, so that we can give space for Q&A, let me make 3 points and try to be as action-oriented as possible. One is on the emergence of social investments and the social investment agenda in international forums. The other one on gaps for social and the barriers, and the role of PDBs and the coalition of social investment in this space. On the first one, on the emergence of social investment in international forums, the G20 last year took on the topic of transition finance and developed a transition finance framework that many of you have referenced the topic already. We'll share the framework after this call. This year, in particularly, the G20 is reflecting on scaling up social impact investment instruments. We've done a stock take with the help of many international partners, looking at bonds, loans, impact investment funds, guarantees, catalytic first loss capital, microfinance, impact crowding platforms. Broadly, we have more than 50 examples around a lot of social SDGs, mainly no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, and reduced inequalities. Again, we'll share the presentation after the call, and you'll be able to see there There are several examples across Latin America, including from FIRA, who we have on the call today, the IFC and Santander in Brazil around access to healthcare providers, Santander in Argentina around salary payments, working capital, purchases of medical equipment, social impact bonds in Peru for coffee producers, a lot. So we are seeing, again, as I was saying, the emergence of social in international investment forums in parallel to the ongoing conversation around climate. The important topic here, or the important message to stress, I would say, is sustainable finance, be it green or climate finance strategies, will fail at addressing the current climate emergency without simultaneously addressing social issues, including socioeconomic inequality, which was just mentioned by the EIB. And there is an opportunity now with the whole MDB reform agenda to build on the momentum around climate adaptation, to recouple social and environmental issues, really showing how both are interdependent and interlinked. I would say 3 key critical issues why it's important to integrate them now. It's becoming increasingly evident that social issues are a financial material risk to investors and companies. There's more and more evidence. Socioeconomic inequality is a systematic risk, and without addressing, as I was saying, these issues, there can be a tension with achieving the social goals. So we must look at them jointly. In terms of the gaps for social, I think a lot were mentioned already. It is about adopting and improving social standards, disclosures, and tools, being able to measure better, examining socioeconomic inequality as an issue of systematic risk, and how does that relate to financial stability, and aligning stakeholders on social and climate implications of financial decision making. Which brings me to the third point, the role of PDBs. I think that here the knowledge that PDBs collectively have and national development banks collectively have around social issues outweighs way more the knowledge that the private sector currently has. So there's a lot that the private sector can learn from the tools that you're using to measure risk, to measure impact, and to integrate social considerations into financial decision making. So bottom line, as action points, let's say from my end, so that we can give room for a discussion, we will share with you the stock take that has these plus 50 examples in Latin America and around the world across the 7 SDGs, mainly social SDGs. We will share with you a document that we are working on specifically around these barriers for social, trying to look at what has been the climate experience and how organizations have integrated climate risk into financial decision making, and how we can learn from that in the social space, and open the doors for our continued collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I welcome Daniela Curcio, Head of Debt Capital Markets from Casa Depositi e Prestiti from Italy, which emitted recently a social bond and will tell us more about how they manage. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Did you see the presentation?
Now we can see. Yes. Now we see the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I will introduce CDP's activities on a capital market side. We prepared these few slides just to give you some information about CDP's framework and the ESG bond issuance. On this first slide, this first slide is focused on our framework. That is the most important document for our ESG issuances. We put in place our CDP Green Social and Sustainability Bond Framework in 2017, where when we issued our inaugural social bond. The framework is aligned with the CDP scope of intervention and the sustainability strategy, and it is in line with the ICMA guideline. On the left-hand side, you can see the main four components of our framework that are use of proceeds, project evaluation and selection, management of proceeds, and reporting. That is one of the main components of the framework. On the right-hand side, you can find the eligibility criteria that are green energy and environmental sustainability, infrastructure and development of city, SMEs and corporate financing, social housing. The proceeds of our ESG bond will be used to finance investment that fall under one or more than one category, making it an important tool to contributing to the promotion and sustainable development. Here, in order to give you an idea of our activity under this framework, in this slide we selected two of social bond issuances. The first one is the social housing bond. With this transaction, the CDP supports social housing intervention with the initiative dedicated to the most vulnerable population groups, which do not have the requirement to access to public housing list, and that fail to satisfy their housing needs to the economic reason or lack of adequate offer on the housing market. It was the main successful social bond for CDP. It is worth noting that we receive strong interest from investment. The reason we believe, I believe, it is linked to the fact that we identify clearly the target population and the scope of intervention, two aspects that was much appreciated from the market. I like to give you some more information about this social bond in terms of number. We finance 235 projects involving more than 11,000 beneficiaries. On the right-hand side, you can see the COVID-19 Social Response Bond 2020. Through this bond, we support the Italian companies hit by the coronavirus emergency. This initiative took place during an unprecedented liquidity crisis, so that we decided to issue a bond aimed to finance micro and small companies with the aim to support their liquidity needs as a result of the coronavirus emergency. We support in particular Italian companies located in the south of Italy, foster their growth and supporting the social cohesion. Again, just to give you an idea in terms of number, we finance more than 6,000 of Italian corporate. Here, to date, we issued 9 ESG bond for a total amount of 6 billion. As you can see, CDP is the most active on the social space. In fact, CDP is one of the major social bond issuers in Europe. And only recently, in line with the strategy plan 2022-2024, that identify a climate section is one of the 4 major issues, we issued the inaugural green bond. More information of our issuance are available on our on CDP website. I think in the interest of time, I stop it my brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Curcio. Now I welcome Mrs. Daisy D'Aquino Filocre, Development Analyst from Banco de Desenvolvimiento de Minas Gerais, which has a strong record of aligning their operations with the Sustainable Development Goals, and will provide a perspective from a national actor. Please, Mrs. Daisy.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to present BDMG's perspective on social investment. Thank you for the invitation. The Minas Gerais Development Bank is a public financial institution with the purpose of promoting the state's economic, financial, and social development. For more than 60 years, BDMG has actively supporting the public and private sectors, and our strategy is based on expanding sustainable investment, identifying new investments that will accelerate progress towards the sustainability, aligning of BDMG operations with the 23rd agenda, exploring the potential for partnership, technical cooperation, and financial innovation. It means forming alliances and technical cooperations with the main aim of seeking the new knowledge on how developed institutions adapt to the global agenda. That said, in November 2019, through a technical cooperation with IDB, we start the path towards the sustainable bond issuance. Briefly, the first step was developing the SDG framework and the GHG emissions calculator. Then the IDB has also assisted the bank in the process of certifying the insurance. And the second part opinion has been made by Sustainalytics. And the IDB has provided as well legal support, which include capacity building activities. In this context, in December 2020, BDMG issued Brazilian's third sustainable bond and the country's first issued by the public financial institution. The bond amounted to $50 million with a 7-year final term and as fully purchased by IDB investment. So in March 2020, the BDMG SDG framework was built. After careful analysis, we identified 13 out of 70 SDGs aligned to the in our portfolio, in our project, and 28 out of 168 SDG targets, divided in 2 categories, social and green. The social category is made up of 6 subcategories: employment generation, micro and small enterprises, gender inclusion, sustainable urbanization, education, economic recovery after disaster, and health. And employment generation is one of the bank's main focuses, since micro and small enterprises is responsible for no less than 81% of jobs created in Minas Gerais. It's important to highlight that through the platform BDMG Digital, micro entrepreneurs can access credit quickly and simply. The bank is always aligned with the SDG 5, gender inclusion, to support women-led macro and small enterprises and encourage their inclusion in business. One of the products also available in the digital channel is the Empreendedoras de Minas. For the sustainable urbanization, more than 400 million reais was disbursed to projects in 300 municipalities. About education, we support primary, secondary, as well higher education infrastructure with the focus on vulnerable people. We must highlight the economic recovery after disasters. BDMG supports companies and municipalities affected by natural causes such as drought and floods, and human causes such as the environmental crimes caused by the dam ruptures of mining companies in the municipalities Mariana and Brumadinho. In response of the COVID-19 crisis, BDMG has created new financial products with special conditions to support different sectors, especially those from health sector. More than ever, this sector was a priority during the pandemic. During that time, the disbursement was 155 million reais to 48 companies, private hospital, clinics, industry, among others, and 14 municipalities that invested in new 40 primary healthcare centers, and so on. So in this way, BDMG has been working actively to fulfill its public mandate and counter-cyclical role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, finally, let me turn to Alberto Lara from FIRA, Mexico, who will explain how social is taken up in the activities of a thematic public development bank like FIRA.
Hola, buenos días a todos.
Hello, good morning to you all.
Hola, buenos días a todos. ¿Sí me escuchan?
Sí, lo escuchamos.
Muy bien. Gracias por la invitación. Es para nosotros en FIRA un orgullo compartir las experiencias recientes que hemos tenido en materia de financiamiento sostenible. Entiendo que estamos muy ajustados con el tiempo, entonces voy a irme un poco rápido. Nada más decirles que en FIRA somos una institución ya de más de 66 años. Somos un banco de desarrollo que opera en segundo piso, dedicados al financiamiento del sector agroalimentario y rural en México. Somos el fondeador más grande de este sector en México y operamos a través de una red de intermediarios financieros que incluye bancos y no bancos, es decir, no damos crédito directo a personas o empresas. También brindamos capacitación y asistencia técnica a los productores, por lo que los ayudamos a estructurar sus proyectos en el sector. En el programa que tenemos en FIRA establecido por primera ocasión en este periodo incluyó los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de la ONU, es decir, se consideraron como una base para elaborar nuestro plan. El plan aquí en México por mandato de ley se tiene que elaborar de acuerdo con el plan de la Administración Federal. Entonces, tenemos un plan para el 2024 que incluye, bueno, elementos del Plan Nacional de Desarrollo, el Plan Sectorial y, como digo, los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de la ONU. En este sentido, establecimos 3 objetivos prioritarios que incluyen inclusión financiera, productividad y eficiencia, y el financiamiento responsable y sostenible. Justamente de este tercer elemento es de donde se derivan algunas de las acciones que hemos realizado en materia ambiental y social ya desde hace algún tiempo. Aquí nada más quiero mostrar un poco pues la línea de tiempo de las acciones que FIRA ha ido tomando en materia ambiental y social y adoptando mejores prácticas gracias a alianzas que hemos tejido con diferentes organismos internacionales que incluyen el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, la Agencia Francesa de Desarrollo, el Banco de Desarrollo Alemán, el Banco Mundial, la CAF también, entre otros, ¿no? Nosotros desde el 2013 empezamos a introducir un sistema de administración de riesgos ambientales y sociales en nuestro proceso de crédito. Este quedó debidamente ya formalizado y automatizado y puesto en nuestros procedimientos y sistemas a partir del 2018, por lo que los créditos superiores a $10 millones tienen que pasar este filtro. Hemos realizado diversas acciones a lo largo del tiempo que incluyen la emisión de bonos verdes desde el 2018, que se hizo la primera edición, que tuvo su segunda y tercera en 2019 y 20. Hemos realizado emisiones de bonos sociales de género en 2 ocasiones. Realizamos el primer bono de inclusión financiera en México. Tenemos ya un reporteo bajo estándares internacionales. Estamos usando el estándar del SASB. Tenemos ya 2 reportes en este sentido. Bajo el estándar del GRI hemos publicado nuestros reportes desde el 2008. Tenemos un rating global por MSCI, que es esta agencia, pues tal vez de las más especializadas en ratings ESG, desde 2020. Tenemos uno nuevo de una agencia, pues que es conocida aquí en la región de Latinoamérica, que se llama HR, que también nos hizo un rating de tipo ESG. Entonces, con todo esto lo que les quiero decir es que en FIRA el tema de ambiental y social, pues data de muchos años atrás, se ha venido estructurando cada vez mejor y tenemos incluso una sección en nuestra página web institucional donde damos cuenta de todo lo que realizamos en esta materia. También entrando específicamente, como nos pidieron, al tema de los bonos temáticos que hemos realizado en los últimos años, quiero decirles que de toda la deuda que tenemos nosotros aquí en FIRA, de la deuda que captamos para poder financiar al sector agroalimentario en México, de este total el 20% está referido exclusivamente a conceptos ambientales y sociales. incluye la emisión de 3 bonos verdes que hicimos desde el 2018. 2 veces hemos emitido un bono social de género en 2020 y 2021. Hicimos también en 2022 la emisión de un bono social de inclusión financiera y aparte tenemos líneas de crédito etiquetadas para temas ambientales y sociales por parte de la AFD y la KfW. Todo este monto significa un poco más de 1,000 millones de dólares. Aquí está expresado en pesos, pero en dólares son un poco más de 1,000 millones. Y son proyectos pues que han sido, y son, digamos, fondos que han sido destinados a proyectos específicos que cumplen ciertas características, que están en marcos de referencia, que están sancionados por un tercero independiente. En estos terceros independientes está sobre todo Sustainalytics, está en la mayoría, y también en uno está Moody's, en el de inclusión financiera. Nosotros nos apegamos estrictamente a los principios del IGMA para la emisión de nuestros bonos, por lo que anualmente también damos cuenta de qué es lo que hemos hecho con los recursos. Publicamos reportes que incluso también son reportes anuales que son certificados por un tercero independiente, y además tenemos el compromiso con nuestros inversionistas de que podemos seguir emitiendo este tipo de bonos en el tiempo, ¿no? Porque tenemos esa capacidad de generar la cartera, además de que a diferencia de otros bonos de este tipo que se emiten, por lo menos en México, no están referidos a grandes proyectos o a megaproyectos, sino más bien están conformados por cientos o miles de proyectos de pequeños y medianos productores. Por último, nada, les quiero mencionar que justo la próxima semana vamos a emitir un nuevo bono verde, pero con un nuevo enfoque. Ya no vamos a estar tanto en el tema de la mitigación de los efectos del cambio climático, sino ahora más bien en la adaptación. Entonces es un nuevo bono de resiliencia que vamos a emitir la próxima semana. Ya hemos desarrollado pues todos los trabajos correspondientes. Tenemos un nuevo marco de referencia para este bono. Hemos estado en roadshow con inversionistas ya casi durante un mes. Y en este nuevo bono, como les digo, va a estar enfocado más a temas de resiliencia, ¿no? Como ustedes saben, las inversiones en adaptación y resiliencia son las que mejoran la capacidad de los sistemas para perdurar frente a cambios inesperados en el clima, ¿no? Aquí asumimos que el cambio climático y sus efectos ya están aquí, y ahora es cómo hacemos para adaptarnos a esa nueva situación. Hay 2 categorías de proyectos, unas relacionadas con la resiliencia. Tiene 3 dimensiones, ¿no? La absorción, la adaptación y la transformación. La absorción es sobre todo qué tan preparado estás para aguantar los choques que te llegan, y la de adaptación se refiere más a cuánta capacidad tienes para ajustarte o cambiar las características de un sistema para responder mejor a las perturbaciones que lleguen. Aquí tuvimos que hacer varios estudios previos para realizar este bono. Nos apoyó la AFD en una primera instancia. Después trabajamos con esta otra institución que han de conocer, internacional, GGI. Y bueno, se desarrolló toda una metodología y al final llegamos a una nueva taxonomía para este tipo de proyectos que apoyen la resiliencia en el sector agroalimentario y rural en México, ¿no? Tenemos pues mucha más información. Aquí solamente doy ejemplos del tipo de vulnerabilidades, como se definió. En la taxonomía se identificaron las vulnerabilidades a las que pueden estar expuestos los productores del sector rural en México, y con base en esas vulnerabilidades identificó qué tipo de proyectos de inversión podían ayudar a mejorar la resiliencia de los productores, ¿no? Aquí en la tabla doy algunos ejemplos, pero en realidad identificamos 88 proyectos de inversión, perdón, que dan que ayudan a la resiliencia de los productores y empresas en este sector. Y los asociamos a diferentes riesgos o vulnerabilidades asociadas al cambio climático, como pueden ser sequías, inundaciones, riesgos de deslaves, plagas, en fin, ¿no? Diferentes tipos de riesgos que representa el cambio climático. y entonces haremos esta nueva emisión, como les digo, la próxima semana, y hasta ahora hemos tenido una muy buena respuesta del mercado. Ya veremos cómo nos va. Les compartiremos los resultados más adelante. Y pues de mi parte, para no tomar más tiempo, pues sería todo. Y quedo a la orden de cualquier forma para cualquier pregunta o comentario. Gracias.
Question or comment that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our
Muchas
speakers and
gracias a
participants
todos
today.
nuestros oradores y participantes el día
We
de
hope
hoy.
the presentations will be helpful to you
Esperamos que las
to
presentaciones
advance
les hayan
more and
servido
better
para avanzar
social
hacia
investment in
más
your
y
institution.
mejores inversiones sociales en sus instituciones.
Now, if there is any question to
Ahora,
be
si hay
taken to
alguna
our panelists,
pregunta
please
para
raise your
nuestros
virtual
panelistas,
hand
por
and we
favor,
will turn
levanten
on
su
your
mano
microphone.
virtual y por favor abran sus
Otherwise, we will
micrófonos.
share the
De
presentation
lo
and be
contrario,
happy
vamos
to
a
connect
compartir las
you with the panelists
presentaciones
in case
y
of
tendré
interest.
mucho gusto de poderlos poner en contacto con algún panelista que ustedes quisieran tener.
We also look forward to your participation to the 2023 Finance in Common Cartagena Summit from the 4th to 6th of September. We are now reaching the end of today's event. Let me give the floor to Romy Calderon, Head of Economic Studies from ALIDE, for a wrap-up and some key takeaways which will fit into the preparation of the upcoming summit. Please, Romy, go ahead.
Bueno, buenos días acá, no sé, en otros lugares, buenas noches, buenas tardes.
I don't. Perhaps good afternoon or good evening. I'm going to make a few comments about the number of very interesting things that we have been touching upon about the different aspects. Let us start commenting with what Adama Marico and our Secretary General were sharing with you, and also Isabel Brown, about the FIC. Of course, when you have a problem which is global, and initiatives like this one that also have a global overview and get together to deal with problems that can be very difficult to deal with from a particular institutional perspective or a country perspective. So in this framework and with this platform that has a more comprehensive approach that brings together a lot of stakeholders, institutions like ALIDE or the International Federation of Financial Institutions. This, of course, improves the capacities and the knowledge. Adama was very well saying about the training, the transfer of knowledge, joint projects, sharing practices and methodologies. Of course, this is one of the relevant topics. And so how to tune up this methodology so as to be able to measure social impact. Many times, one of the difficulties that we traditionally have had is that they did not have the necessary methodologies, or whenever they had the methodology.
O constante los estudios de impacto
We have not had the environmental impact studies done. And I believe that these global platforms and the exchange of information allow us to start tuning up these methodologies, to share these methodologies, to share more accurately the impact that we need to have in this topic, particularly of social investment. And now let us move on to another line of thought. The concern about an emphasis on the inclusion of gender, the support of women that we have seen throughout the crisis. It was very much disturbed. If you see the unemployment figures, the women were the most affected ones. The unemployment rate in any country, as we can see, was much higher than before. Then we also have the support to small enterprises. This is another aspect that has been brought up. Ramon Pineda has touched upon this, and we see here the great work that was done by BMG and, of course, other studies from LAC, and to see the impact that there was in the small and medium companies, particularly in those companies that were mostly affected in Latin America and other OCDE countries. And we see that the micro companies were the ones that were most affected. And when we think about them, when these are companies that concentrate employment, we see that impact on employment was very, very big. And then the development banks, going again to what Daisy was mentioning, did many important activities. The instrument and actions were quite diverse, particularly, and the most important thing was to facilitate liquidity, either directly to the companies or through intermediaries, to give them more tools to channel additional resources. So there's some estimates in Latin America, to give you an idea, the development banks, the $240 or $270,000 million, and according to 90,000 million were for COVID-related programs. And this, of course, based on how these development banks are focusing basically on small clients, this definitely had a very big social impact, which has not been measured. There's some studies nonetheless from Visa Argentina, among others, and the IDB that has also done some studies on the impact to see how important these programs have been to stop companies from going bankrupt, or just the collapse of several financial institutions. So another topic that I would like to underscore at this point, sorry,
Solo 5 minutos, sí.
Ya, entonces lo último que voy a tratar es bueno,
touch upon. Well, that talk about development bank it's really thrilling. We're talking about social investment, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the other topic are what the different speakers were mentioning, Isabel, Graciela, Cedilar, at the level of the institutions, the different instruments and mechanisms that you are developing to channel funding and to also attract resources are friends.
Sobre los diferentes tipos de bonos. Y también se hablaba mucho de lo que en perspectiva van a hacer los bancos, ¿no? Algunos bancos ya tienen alineados, digamos, sus programas a los ODS para ver la contribución a los ODS, los otros están en camino o en perspectiva de hacerlo, y eso obviamente nos va a llevar a tener mejores mediciones del impacto que tienen nuestras instituciones, ¿no? En fin, hay una serie de cosas que podríamos comentar, pero son 5 minutos. Gracias, muy amables.
Since time is short, I would like to finalize here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone for your
muchísimas
participation and to our speakers for their valuable contributions. Now we would like to take a quick group photo. So please, I will be turning all the attendees into panelists so they can access to their cameras. So please, we ask for a little patience. Thank you very much.